So we look over here to the Mariners. I mean, I know that, with being in a playoff spot at the time being, there's heightened expectation to continue to hopefully take the first overall wild card spot, host a 3-game set in the playoffs. But I mean, we have some lighter news this week, which is kind of funny and something I didn't really expect. We'll get to that in a minute. But going forward into our past game recaps, the Mariners played 2 series over the past week. One in the Bronx against the Bronx Bombers, the New York Yankees, which is a daunting task. I mean, the Yankees have guys like Aaron Judge who are on pace to eclipse Roger Maris for the most homers in a single season, well, by a Yankee at least. So August 1st against the Yankees, exactly a week ago, the Mariners lost that opening game of the series 7-2. Player of the game designated hitter Kyle Lewis. Lewis, 1 hit, 1 run, an RBI. Lewis would have a solo homer in the second inning, but ultimately the Mariners would not be able to keep pace with the Yankees in Game 1. In Game 2 on the second, the Mariners would win that game 8-6. Player of the game, first baseman Carlos Santana going 1 hit, 1 double, and 3 RBIs. And a big bounce back game. Again, this is in New York against the Yankees, which is daunting in and of itself, as I mentioned, and they're able to split the series there. Going into the Wednesday matinee game in New York on the 3rd, the Mariners would come out and kind of dominate that one, winning 7-3. Player of the game, third baseman Eugenio Suarez, 1 hit, 1 run, 3 RBIs, and a 3-run homer. So to set the stage for this series, and then the one that the Mariners are about to play, then over the course of today and the next 2 days, again, the Yankees are tied with the Astros for the best records, the most wins in the American League. Not sure where the Dodgers are checking in the National League, but the Yankees have talent all over their roster. They're the Bronx Bombers for a reason, and they've got a great pitching staff. With that being said, you can see in that third game on August 3rd, the Mariners got after the Yankees, and even the game before, scoring 8 runs. So it's really interesting to me. I've talked about it in articles before, but the Mariners offense can be very inconsistent, very Jekyll and Hyde like. You see they put up 3 homers in the first inning against Garrett Cole, who has struggled in the past year, I would say, to an extent, but he's still one of the top pitchers in the league. You've got one of the better rotations. The Yankees acquired Frankie Montas from the Athletics over the trade deadline. I know they wanted Luis Castillo, but couldn't get the deal done, as you saw the Mariners did. But ultimately, that was an impressive series to win, which kind of makes this next series back home against the Angels a little frustrating because you see what you did just a day ago or so, right? And you come into the series back home at T-Mobile Park and you say, what happened? Why are we? It's almost like you're playing down to the other team's level. We go to the Angels series, which is a 4-game set over the weekend. August 5th versus the Angels in Game 1 was a narrow loss, 4-3. The Mariners would go down 3-0 early, storm back in the 9th inning and lose in extra innings. Player of the game, first baseman Ty France. France had 1 hit, but 2 RBIs. That 2 RBI base hit in the bottom of the 9th tied the game up for Seattle and would send things to extra innings. As I mentioned, though, unfortunately losing in the 10th. August 6th versus the Angels in Game 1 of a split doubleheader. The Mariners would win Game 1, 2-1. So a nice narrow game there, bouncing back from that loss last night. Player of the game, once again, Ty France, 1 hit, 1 run, 2 RBIs. France would have a 2-run homer that gave the Mariners the lead in the 3rd, and they would never look back. So nice to get Game 1, and then being there was about 40 minutes from the time the game ended to the time that the gates opened up back at T-Mobile Park. So, I mean, you get a quick breath of air, and then we're back to things. The second game of that doubleheader was far more unfortunate, though, as the Mariners lost 7-1, as you can see. Just brutal. I mean, this is a Angels team that Shohei Ohtani has been struggling at the plate. Mike Trout's not playing at the moment. So your 2 superstars, 2 of the biggest faces in all of baseball, not really pulling their weight for this Angels team, and you still get blown out by them. Player of the game, catcher Luis Torrens. Torrens, a 1-hit, 1 run. He had his first homer of the year in that game against the Angels. So, as I mentioned, disappointing result. You really wanted to win this series against the Angels because, Bel, what do we talk about? Winning series, right?
Mhm.
And this is a Angels team that has one of the worst records in baseball over the course of the past 2 months, following the brawl or the dust up, whatever you want to call it, down in Anaheim. And you split a series with them. At the end of the day, you got to take care of business against these teams that are not vying for a playoff spot. And you didn't do it in that series. You can be content with the split, but at the end of the day, you should expect better. In the August 7th game versus the Angels this past Sunday, the Mariners would win that 1-6-3, obviously, to take that series split. Play of the game, left fielder Jesse Winker, 1 hit, 1 run, 4 RBIs. As the great Dave Niehaus would say, break out the rye bread and salami, grandma. It was a grand slam. I mean, I think that's the second one of the year following Julio's down in Texas right before the All-Star break. So good for Winker to get that going, get that grand slam. Obviously, you can tell you take away those 4 runs, you're looking at a different result. The Mariners, with that result, with that grand slam, would go to 17 for 93 on the season with the bases loaded. So, still working on that number, but really clutch to get that stat at that moment to really put you ahead early. And that was the reason why I selected Winker as my player of the week, or part of it. He was kind of the cherry on top. Winker has been playing better as of lately since the All-Star break. The 14 plate appearances, 5 hits, 5 runs, 2 homers. I believe that's 5 RBIs, 11 total bases. You can see the numbers are improving over this past 7 days. With that being said, with Julio Rodriguez out, he should be back Wednesday. And some of these other batters in the lineup kind of struggling. I mean, I love Kyle Lewis as much as the next guy, but Kyle's been struggling to an extent. Winker too, since he had a career year last year, and there was some worry that with the marine layer here in Seattle that he might take a dip. He talked about, the expectations for himself and turning a corner, and said that when he got traded, that he did set an expectation for himself, and it was tough because he hadn't been traded at the big league level before. With that being said, I got to cut down on that. Winker's been, as you can see over the past 7 days, improving, and to get that sort of improvement, to have that bat in the lineup would be huge for this Mariners team, because if you look at it ideally, right, when Julio's back, in left field, we go Winker, center Julio, right field Mitch Haniger, and then your standard infield of Suarez, Crawford, probably Frazier, who has been doing better. I almost picked him as my player of the week. France. So that's your ideal healthy lineup, and then Raleigh as the backstop. To get that out production from Winker, who has historically had his best months in August, is big to really taking care of business, to scoring runs, to helping your starting rotation, and as I said, taking care of business, because we're playing too many one-run games. That you played 2 one-run games against the Angels, and you shouldn't have had to do that. So that's my piece on Winker. Why did you go with Gino? I know that he had the bright neon green tank top on Sunday was I think the special good vibes only section, which was fun to see Scott wearing that. I think a bunch of other guys had it on, but what was your reasoning behind going with Gino this week?
I thought I almost went with Ty France, and that kind of just felt safe. Although he did really well against the Angels in his games back, but I went with Gino because of his performance with the Yankees. So that was a series 1. Gino had, in his 4 at-bats, he had 2 runs, 2 hits, 1 walk, and a 2 RBI against the Yankees for that second game. And then in that third game, of course, that 1 hit, 1 run, 3 RBI, 3-run homer. So I thought he just really stepped up and helped us secure that series, and that was big. So I had to go with Gino.
Yeah, and when we had the All-Star break, I had obviously those 2 edits made for Ty and Julio, and it was just interesting looking at their stats, and you see in most of these stats that matter offensively, Gino's right there, second or third. He's just always there. So he's been, I look at that. I've a buddy of mine keeps up with his defensive stats. He's been, and as we talked about when the trade happened, and since then, was kind of thought as an afterthought, and has just been great over at third. Has some errors, but over the course of 162 games, you're gonna, right? So it's really cool to have Gino on this team, because it seems like he really fits in with this clubhouse. So I don't blame you for that choice this week, as you mentioned, coming up big in that series against New York on the road. Continuing here, With injury-related news, had an update from Dipoto on the 4th. Jerry Dipoto said that he expects Ty France to be in the lineup on Friday, which he was. And they were waiting for Mitch Haniger to tell them that he is ready to return, and he would play in Game 2 of the Angels doubleheader on Saturday and has been in the lineup since. I think he's been pretty productive as well, I believe. Following along with that Mariners game on Sunday, Mitch was getting on base. I know he had a single and a walk. So, I mean, that's instant once you get guys back. I know that after the trade for Luis Castillo, Jerry Dipoto said we're not necessarily looking too hard for another bat because we know we're going to get Mitch Haniger back. So is that working out? I'd say it's too early to tell, but having Mitch back is certainly a great presence. And, it's not anything on Sam Haggerty, who's been playing in right pretty often. I think Haggerty's played up pretty well, but Mitch is your guy in right field. To have Haggerty come off the bench is a luxury to an extent, so it's great to have Mitch back in the lineup. Speaking of the trade deadline, we look into team-related news here in the Mariners. After the Luis Castillo trade, didn't make anything too groundbreaking trade-wise, but did acquire some interesting names. On the 2nd, the team acquired catcher Curt Casali from the San Francisco Giants in exchange for right-handed pitcher Michael Streifler. Casali, overall in his career, has been a solid backup, having to take over for the Giants due to Joey Bart being injured. But Casali has also been injured. I know that yesterday he was playing for the Tacoma Rainiers in his rehab stint, so I know that the Mariners want to check in with them. A couple of these players that they acquired via trade because of their injuries, but it seems like Casali is closer as opposed to anything else to joining the big league club. So that'll be interesting. I know that kind of puts some pressure on Luis Torrens because it says, oh, we're getting a backup catcher. It's like, what about me? Torrens, to this point in the season, I know we looked at his solo homer there in one of those games, has generally disappointed. You look at last year, he had some decent pop, was able to be in that tandem. You had Raleigh down the stretch. Tom Murphy was in there. You kind of have three catchers on the big league roster. It doesn't really happen. So the pressure, with that slow start this year was put on. And I think this is maybe a wake-up call for Torrens. So we'll see how that all goes at the end of the day. But I know Casali is getting healthier, so we'll see how that plays out when he joins the big league club. Also on the second move of the day, the second of three, the team acquired a relief pitcher, Matthew Boyd, from the Giants as well. Boyd has not played this season due to injury, but is expected to be better soon. He could provide lefty reliever depth, something that the Mariners need with some injuries. Having Ken Giles out, having Diego Castillo out, both of those players actually made rehab appearances up in Everett yesterday. So it will be interesting to see when those guys come back. But this was also a move that was interesting because Casali and Boyd, as I mentioned, have been injured for a decent amount of this season. Boyd was acquired for Andy Thomas, a catcher that actually was playing in Everett for the Aqua Sox. So, again, interesting moves, right? We'll wrap it up on the second with the team acquiring utility player Jake Lamb from the LA Dodgers in exchange for cash considerations or a player to be named later. If you don't know, Lamb is actually a Seattle native, went to high school here in Seattle, went to the University of Washington, and so the Seattle boy returns home and did make his debut with the big league club. I believe it was actually on Friday. I think he came in to pinch hit on Friday, and I think he got on base. So good for Jake Lamb. I'm biased we're both Huskies, Bel. So there is the bias there. But it was interesting with Dipoto because he said these were all under the radar moves. How much these guys are going to contribute, I don't know. They're obviously not wave makers necessarily, right? So it'll be interesting to monitor and see how these guys do for the club, how they impact, how they help push this team forward as the season progresses. On August 4th, Eugenio Suarez, as Bel selected for Player of the Week, was named as the Mariners Heart and Hustle Award winner for 2022, as voted on by his teammates. So that's cool to see. On the 5th, some more roster moves. The team claimed outfielder Derek Hill off of waivers from the Detroit Tigers, designated infielder Kevin Padlo for assignment. Jake Lamb reported to the club, and also designated outfielder Travis Jankowski for assignment. So Jankowski there played in one game and had one at-bat, Mariners legend. Thank you for all you did, Travis. On the 6th, some more roster moves. Mitch Haniger was reinstated from the 60-day injured list with his right ankle sprain. So he got reinstated in between those two games taking place. And as a corresponding move, infielder Abraham Toro was optioned to AAA Tacoma. I'll say really quickly, I know Toro's provided some great moments. He seems to have an uncanny knack to provide offense late in the game, but he's struggled for the majority of this season. He struggled. So I don't think this is a bad thing. It never hurts to say, hey, you're just going to be down with Tacoma. You're going to be down with the AAA team. Work on some things, and we can have a spot for you. At the end of the day, it's just, as I mentioned, it's just Tacoma. If they need him, they can call him up relatively quick. It's happened before. So hoping that Abe is able to get that all situated, and hopefully we'll see him back sooner rather than. I need to ask him if he's okay with being called
Abe. I was going to call that.
We'll see about that. But you think it's an easy transition, right? Abraham, Abe, regardless. The news that I was talking about when we got to the head of the Mariners section was that the team adopted a dugout dog. His name is Tucker, as you can see in the photo here. He's a 4-year-old lab/retriever mix. He was adopted by the clubhouse from Okan Dogs. He plans to be around the clubhouse, be around the ballpark, travel with the team is what I read as well.
Wow.
So that'll be interesting. There was a funny quote. There has been no comment by the Mariner Moose, so we'll have to see how that all sorts itself out. But certainly cool to see. I know the Kraken have a team dog as well. So I don't know. Cool to see. Fun little news for you amidst all the seriousness of a playoff race, right? So continuing on into league news, as we talked about, the trade deadline took place. Juan Soto did get traded. He obviously isn't a Mariner, else we would have talked about it. The San Diego Padres landed Juan Soto from Washington. The full deal included San Diego receiving outfielder Juan Soto and first baseman Josh Bell, who has been pretty solid in his own right. And Washington receives a slew of prospects and one big league player. Shortstop C.J. Abrams, left-handed pitcher Mackenzie Gore, outfielders Robert Hassel III and James Wood, right-handed pitcher Jarlin Susana, and first baseman Luke Voigt. So basically, those are 5 of the Padres' top prospects. And Luke Voigt, a guy who's been with the big league club, and San Diego receives Juan Soto and Josh Bell. So the Padres really went in at the deadline. So it'll be really interesting to see if that team, how far they take it. I'll keep an eye on them. I don't mind San Diego. They got a great ballpark down there at Petco Park, but they really went fully in. And for anybody complaining that the team did not acquire Soto, I mean, you would have had to give up so much more, and you wouldn't have acquired Luis Castillo, bottom line. So I'm okay with the not acquiring Soto, but just really interesting to see that from afar, to be on the outside looking and to see how that whole trade went down. Continuing on the 4th of the month, it was announced that 2 teams will play in London next season. The Cubs and the Cardinals, the 2 rivals, will head across the pond for a 2-game series next June on the 24th and the 25th. They will play in London Stadium, which is home to West Ham United. So this is a move that is something that the MLB is doing to try and grow the game internationally. I don't know how London will respond to it, but it's certainly going to be a really interesting setup. Again, playing in a football pitch. I don't know how they're going to get the walls set up and the infield, but we'll have to see how that goes. And I'll watch. That's interesting to me. On the 6th, an Ohtani trade reportedly never came close, despite the Angels fielding calls for the two-way star. The Angels never seriously considered moving him. So he'll just have to be a Mariner when he becomes a free agent. I jest. And then also on the 6th, it was announced that legend Miguel Cabrera will play in 2023. The Tigers slugger does not intend to retire this year and does plan to play out his contract. So that'll be cool to see. I know that a bunch of the Cardinals guys, Albert Pujols, Adam Wainwright, Yadier Molina, are all finishing up their seasons and their careers this year. Miguel, it was kind of in the air if he would, and now we get official word that it'll be next year. So looking ahead, the Mariners sit at a 59-win, 51-loss record. They are still second in the AL West, and that, knock on wood, probably won't change for a bit. They sit currently at 3rd in the wild card race. They're tied with Tampa Bay for that second spot, but Tampa Bay does have the tiebreaker. So Seattle falls to the third spot, but you can tell there, with that being said, it's a tight race. They are two games behind Toronto for first wild card spot. So you're kind of chasing Toronto at the moment. Their week, this upcoming week, is not easy. As I mentioned, they start a 3-game set against the Yankees here from the 8th through the 10th. Those first 2 games on the 8th and 9th are on 7:10 start times, and the 10th is a Wednesday matinee game with a 1:10 first pitch. They then go back on the road to play the Rangers, who seems like they've seen a lot of recently, down in Arlington, August 12th through 14th. August 12th is a 5:05 p.m. first pitch. The 13th is a 4:15 p.m. first pitch, and then a matinee game on the 14th, an 11:35 a.m. start. So taking that into consideration, it's going to be another busy week for the Mariners. The Yankees are in town, so a serious opponent ahead of them.